All right, you ready? All
I
right.
guess so.
Okay, so we're very honored to have Clarence Jey with us here. You've won all sorts of awards. You won a Grammy for songwriting. You just had a song on the New Year's Eve show this
That's
year.
right. Yeah, Dick Clark's
Yeah.
show. Yeah.
So how did
that's
you
cool.
kind of get started with music?
Okay, I was born in Sri Lanka, little island of India, and my mom happened to be a pianist, church, etc., etc. So I was dragged in when I was 4 or 5 to play, start learning. I had no choice. She had a ruler. I think we all sort of experienced it, but it was good. And I didn't like it at the start, but after a while, I started realizing that hey, I like to play, just listen to songs and pop songs and play songs. Fast forward, Australia, 20-something years, US, a dozen years. Been doing music, 24 years professionally. So, and Cubase, I think 23 years. Started with the Cubase MIDI, 16 channels of MIDI. That's all I could afford at the time. Paid off my parents, I think. But here we are.
Well, at least your mom didn't slap your wrist to make you do algebra or something.
I thought you should try
not
that too,
too
but that was
bad.
Dad. Cool.
Yeah. So what attracted you to Cubase initially?
Initially, it was budget because that's all I could afford at the time. I had a Yamaha keyboard, PSR 560 maybe, 5 whatever it was. And I realized that, hey, you could connect up the MIDI stuff at the back and you can save what you compose on a bunch of tracks, export it as a MIDI file. And then I realized that, hold on, there's a computer thing that happens, the Mac Classic, you know, those little tower things at the time. And oh, there's a software that comes with it. Oh, Cubase. And I could afford that disc in Perth, Australia. And that was my understanding of MIDI and sequencing. And then it went from there into, I guess, the audio world when I could afford the software and audio versions of it, and Cubase sort of going deeper, Steinberg really going up as just a workstation, an amazing workstation. So I just stuck with it, and just the improvements alone just kept me there.
So you kind of do songwriting. You're often known as an engineer, a producer. How would you describe yourself?
Yeah, started as a musician, pianist first, then realized that I could write songs. I tried to write songs, and then realized that to write songs, I'd need to I guess show it to people. I'd probably had to produce to an extent, so a producer, and then I realized that I like producing, and part of the extension of producing was learn to engineer. So that was that other aspect of trying to understand the engineering aspect as well, being a producer and working with singers, etc.
So your studio has grown from a Mac Classic and a Yamaha PSR. Can you describe how your studio set up?
So the Mac Classic 480, 4 megs of RAM, and it had I'd bounce everything into a MT4X. It was a 4-track cassette thing, and track bounce. I ended up with 7 tracks, so that was cool. Then,
Dare to dream.
Yeah, and then mix it down to a metal cassette. Fast forward, in Sherman Oaks, I have a 24-channel RCA recording console that's from RCA Studio in New York. It's a vintage console from the 60s, and then Steinberg Cubase being my DAW, and it's integrated pretty well, and a whole bunch of audio, vintage analog gear and drum sets and all that stuff. So yeah.
All right, do you want to play? You want to tell us about the track and maybe
Yeah.
play it? We'll make sure we're not going to kill everyone.
No worries.
All right.
By the way, how is everyone? Good. Well, thank you for being here as well. And here's something that I did last year, which was an interesting, quick project because I was out on vacation, and my writing partner, he was like, hey, we got this thing. Do we have time to do this? And I'm like, oh, shoot, I'll be back in 2 days before it's due. So I literally had a day to address it. I guess in my mind, I'd seen the request, and the request was basically for an online ad campaign. And the visuals were provided with a basic track at the back. So we had to write a new song with a certain vibe. And today, I sort of want to go through. It's a simple session. Had to be done fast, and I want to go through the idea of Cubase being a one-stop shop, and meaning, an idea is created. It's up here. You can catch it pretty fast. You can work on it. You can record things along the way. You can use the MIDI stuff, etc., and you can use the audio functions, get all the vocals right. You don't need third-party stuff. You can finish it in the box, in-house, and then video, you can export the whole thing, and you've got a product that's out purely with Cubase. And that, to me, means a lot, because it's a finisher, not just a starter, and then it's like, okay, now what do we do at the mixing stage, or what do we do at the video stage, etc., etc. So for me, that helps me with my creativity, makes it faster, etc. So efficiency, whatever. So in this instance, what I might do is I'll open this up. I'm just going to play the visual for a second. It's 30 seconds. I think we know who that is, right? Right? So that was the thing. And it had a guide track and some notes. Okay. So first thing was to import the video. I think, Cubase has had that before, but in this case, now we can also export with Cubase 10.5. But just drag the video in into Cubase, and the idea started flowing. And generally, the tempo that I worked out was 114.1. Okay, yes, sir.
Did you import from QuickTime or did you import from a video source?
I got it from, actually, I think I got it from QuickTime, right? I think, yeah, both work, right? Yeah. So yeah, I got in this case, it was just a download link, downloaded, dragged it in, and it's very fast too. It's yeah. So so at that point, worked out a general tempo to match the cuts, right? And I was literally on a piano trying to work out some chords. Okay, so generally what I do is, my first thing is I try and go to HALion, which is what's going on here? Okay, HALion, which is a great VST meaning virtual instrument. And I use some of the HALion sounds for inspiration. And so trying to work out some chords, etc., and that's where the inspiration started for like the lyric, okay? And so while I'm speaking about the HALion thing, what I'd like to talk about is what Cubase has, which I enjoyed using, is this idea of, can you guys see here, retrospective recording, okay? Anyone know what that is? Go. Oh, sorry.
You can just play, and you didn't hit record, and after you played something, and so you hit the space bar, and then the playback stops, and oh, this was actually a really good take.
Yeah.
You just hit retrospective record, and the MIDI track is there.
Exactly. So in other words, you forgot to press the record button, okay?
Always the best part.
Always the
when
best
record
part
is
happens.
not enabled.
I know,
somehow.
right? So let's just say, okay. Hold on for a second. What am I doing here? So in this case, I gotta switch it off, right? Think MT, right? Exactly. Right? And I go here. All right. There. it's remembered it, memorized it. What was cool was I had it actually on loop, and it actually, what it does is it breaks it into segments, right? What we call lanes in Cubase. And you could have the loop going without having the record button pressed over a certain section, over 4 bars or whatever, and it would have recorded the whole thing without you knowing. And you might go, oh man, I just missed a take. No, I didn't. It's cool for drum programming as well. You know, you're just doing a cool part, live part, etc. And so that sort of comes in handy.
You first have to enable the retrospective recording.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense?
And then if you don't want whatever it is you did, you just move on and it
Exactly.
goes away.
Exactly. And then you just press the record button and do your thing. Yeah, you could have practiced on it. Basically, it's to catch what you may potentially, some of the magic that you could have lost.
And once you hit record and record another track,
Yeah.
then does that retrospective recording then go away?
You could empty the buffer if you want to.
You can
Yeah.
empty it, or you could not
Yeah.
empty it.
Yeah.
And let them kind of pile up in there.
So that is a tool, a toy, etc. It's a great tool for MIDI work, right? So at that point, we come up with a bunch of chords. Now, fast forward, I started laying down a very basic rhythm, right, section. And what I like here is what Cubase has is on the right side, we have the VST instruments, and we can go to, for example, loops. That's part of, comes with Steinberg, okay? Oh, you got a lot more than I have, Sean. So what I did was, I think I went to one of the Soul Assembly, one of the, I guess a loop pack, right? And search for like, I don't know, a hip hop kick. Is that connected right there?
He may not have the control room
Oh,
open.
okay. All right.
So you could just audition your different sounds very
Sounds there,
easily
yeah.
in the media bag.
Yeah. So, and all I do is just basically drag it in there, okay? If I can, what it does is actually tempo adjusts if you want to, okay? Or in my case, what I did was I just wanted to get, I think, a kick and a hi-hat even, right? So what I did was, and what I usually do is when I get a fun sort of loop is I go into here, one moment, and I double click and I go to the hit points, okay? So I have a little fun with the hit points themselves, and it gives me like a threshold as to where I want the hit points to be, okay? And from there on, from there, I could create slices or create MIDI notes. So what I would do is I'd create a bunch of slices, okay? So now within this, we have the hit points cut up the way we want it, okay? We can adjust that based on the loop or the sound that's there. And what I would do is just probably just drag whatever I feel like into an audio track, okay? And I'd render that, bounce it, etc., etc. So that gives me a lot of flexibility in terms of choosing what I want from some source, you know? And in this case, it could be the Steinberg stuff, or it could be my whole media bay that I could go to in my computer. It's you know, I got all the access in there to drag whatever I feel like into it, and audition it, and it would time stretch, etc., as it comes along. So it's pretty powerful in making things faster, you know. So and then what I did also was I created an instrument, and for drums, my go-to in Steinberg is basically it's called Groove Agent. Anyone heard of Groove Agent here? Who uses it? Okay, So there is the Groove Agent, which is the full version, and the SC version, the smaller version. So let's just open up the smaller version for now. And okay, remove, ignore. Okay, so, and what I could do is this sample here, there, right there, I could drag that into that and create basically my drum machine sampler. And within that, I could pitch, filter, amp, etc., and play with my sample further if I wanted to. You know what I mean? So that makes it easy to program. So I could create my own kit real quick, get a hat in, etc., and create my own drum loop or whatever I want, and go from there. So that is pretty much where I came up with the that's pretty much what I used to come up with the whole rhythm section for the record. And so fast forward, let me start playing you guys some stuff. So, all right, very simple. They want a little old school, so went for a old school sound. Very simple, right? And just and I've rendered a couple of things, bounced it to make it audio for my own use, okay? And then after that, I was, that's the rhythm, and then got on chords, right? And then let me play the video now from the top. Here we go. Coming up with some melodies. Little fill there. Right? So that was the basic idea of how the inspiration. Yes, sir.
Does the program have the ability to do streamers?
It doesn't. We have some of the capabilities in Nuendo for doing ADR stuff, but in Cubase, it's just kind of the straight video playback.
So
But you're probably not conducting orchestras based on the video. So.
right. So at that point, it was the rest was to continue the lyric line and the melody, and we had basically half a day to get the vocalist in, coordinate with the vocalist, make sure the payments are right, etc., etc. Which, as we know, hi, how you doing, man? Thanks for coming. So yeah, these days it's a little get it all right, especially with union / whatnot. So so we have all those that have to be taken care of prior to this is going on. So that's why I think this has become so good in terms of efficiency and doing things fast, where I could just focus on this and we're getting the other stuff on the side, getting it done so that we get a product very quickly, you know. And from there on, it basically just went into instrumentation, okay? So what I'll do is I'll just play the music part, and I'll just mute the vocals, okay? All right. Oops, what's going on there? Okay, so that was a very basic track. And at that point, I was getting a little creative in terms of, hey, let me get a sticker mic. I forget what mic it was, but in front of the speakers, right? Catch the room a little, and then throw the whole thing under that, and then add a couple of basic plugins. I like Roomworks here. I think I used a vintage plate from there. It's pretty good. I have an original plate, so I get to somewhat compare as well. It's great sound. So I caught that as well, just to add a little flavor underneath that. You'll probably hear it unmuted without. Right, I'll turn it up a little. Just a very basic recording of right in the middle of the music part, just to get a flavor, because we don't have the old rooms like we did. So it's just my way of getting around things. And at that point, the vocalist turned up, and we had a basic guide track, and we decided to cut vocals. She's a great singer, so I didn't have a lot of editing. And in editing, basically, Cubase is amazing in terms of edits, but also who uses VariAudio here for vocal correction? Yeah. So it's an amazing, I guess, plugin, part of Cubase. Would you call it that?
Editor. Yeah.
Editor. So I'd just double click my vocal take, and VariAudio, it breaks it up into the notes, and I can adjust anything that I feel like, into. Yes, sir. Yeah. 1 second. I'll just show you. Maybe I should play the song first before I mess the melody up. Huh? 1 second. Right. What am I here?
Never told me.
Right. 1 second. Oops. What's going on here?
You could just activate the VariAudio.
Oh, I didn't? I thought I did. Oh, my bad. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. All right, so here we are. And what it does is hear the notes, okay? Nobody. Okay, so I'm just using the laptop here. You can move it up, down, okay? And also you can tighten it better in terms of the curve itself. 1 second, here we go. Straighten it up a little, okay? And you could cut it. You can separate the notes. You can cut it further, or or glue another note with this one. Okay, you can do a lot of things with it in terms of editing. There we go. Oops, a second. I think I might have had that take it a different. Yeah, got it right here.
Never told me. Never told.
Let me just change that note.
Never told me.
Okay, so pretty quick. It sounds good. End result is that basically your product is getting there faster. So, and then another function that I use typically with Cubase is the idea of opening another project. Okay, so it could be, for example, there's two things actually. One is I could open another session, file, open. I don't have another session here, but technically I could open another session, drag a certain sound from the other session into this. So I may have a loop somewhere else. I literally drag it in. Or I could go into File Import and tracks from a project, okay? So I could go to a certain project and then click the certain tracks that I want, and it would actually time align it as well. So those are options that come in handy for my work, knowing that I did I did a loop, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago in certain song. I don't want to open that session and, I mean, close this, open that, export, drag it in. In this case, I could open that, it'll freeze this for a moment, I'll drag it in, and it's done. So it enhances the workflow as well. So let me now play you her the delivery of it with some backing vocals that we did, very simple backing vocals.
Were you the vocalist on that?
No, I wish I could. I would have saved a bunch of money doing that.
I lost some in the end, though.
Nobody ever told me,
Melody change.
'cause no one really knows what love's supposed to feel like when you feel it from your head to your toes. But if I go by the way it feels every time we kiss, I don't care what they say, I say love feels like this. It feels like this. Oh, 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 oh.
Love feels like this, right? So that was, thank you. So that was the delivery of it. Let me go into my session itself. Okay, so generally what I have is the monitor path, and at home, because I have a bunch of analog gear, etc., etc. So if I want a flavor of the month, I could go out, audio out of Cubase, patched out into some hardware compressor, come back in, and it goes out. In this instance, all I'm using is a vintage compressor on the mix bus, Cubase EQ, Cubase multiband, cheating a little right there, and major cheating, plate reverb on the mix bus. Okay, just for that sound. Okay, no one does it, or maybe people do it, but it was like it just sounded better, and just throw it in. Okay, so experimenting, breaking the rules, it doesn't matter. But point being, it's all Steinberg Cubase plugins that I'm using on everything here.
But you already had some reverb going, so using reverb in the mix, you're sort of doing two reverbs then?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So yeah, I caught that, and I got a certain sound, and then I wanted to get, once the vocals were there, I wanted to get a slightly broader sound to go, oh, that feels like, you know what I mean, somewhere like an escape of old school thing. Sure. So so that was just to add, it had to be delivered right, and people who are working in ad agencies, etc. For them, it's not the technical on how it got there; it's what they hear to match the emotion of the visual. And if you can catch it in the first 5 seconds, you've got them. So that was that's where it came in handy. And for my MIDI stuff, basically, I have some hardware synths. So I have my hardware template set up where it's I've assigned MIDI channels, etc., to each hardware. And Cubase, I love this thing again. It's called Patch Script. Basically, what it does is it connects synths to Cubase, where I don't have to go to a hardware synth. I could navigate all the patches from within Cubase because each one has the patch name, etc., assigned to it. So so I could have a, for example, I could have, it's missing MIDI here. Hold on, see if I can show it even. 1 second. Here we go. Let's see if the patch script comes up here for some reason.
It may not be installed.
It may not be installed in this
But
instance.
you can basically select all of the names from your synth patches by, you can see the drop-down name and
So
guessing program and bank change.
Yeah, bank change, etc. So it's already assigned to it. I can just click that sound. It's there. If I want to tweak it, then I'll run up and tweak it or whatever. But other than that, it'll come back into my module and into my computer, and I could just record my hardware synths without having to step out. So that's pretty much how this session came together very fast. Couple, I think I want to mention a couple of little things. Video export. Oh, another thing is I use now, which is super amazing, is basically the whole spectral comparison of EQs. I know there are certain plugins and whatever that people use, and in this instance, guess what? It's in Cubase. So, so basically, we go to the EQ section right here. Okay, so just say we got the kick drum. Okay, right? And I say, you know what? I want to compare it to a bass. Okay.
Ever told me, 'cause no one really knows.
Right? So I can adjust that based on what I want to, you know, where I want the frequencies to sit. If I want to adjust the bass right there or the kick right there, I can do that as well. So suddenly I'm sort of mixing as I'm creating, which is, I reckon it's one of the coolest things to get the work done fast as well. That applies to backing vocals as well. When you got a group stack of backing vocals and it's taken up a bottom end, and then you got the lead vocal doing something, and just to cut out things or add things, it's just to compare, and it does literally compare two things at a time. So
from a songwriting perspective, is it harder to kind of get a complete statement in 30 seconds versus a traditional song form of 3 minutes? Is that harder to make it tight like that, to have a beginning, middle, end in that amount of time? Any tips for how to make that work?
Great question, man. That's a tough one. I guess the difference is, I think we're not trying to impress A&Rs in this instance. We're trying to impress people who are not impressed, but we're trying to sell a product to someone who's already got a solution in mind. So at that point, I feel that this is easier because I think the whole A&R step is a totally different step of okay, well, trying to create a 3-minute song, where's the market like, et cetera, and the literally the beat. Trying to go, is the beat correct for that artist, and how far are you off the beat, the track, and then the lyrics, right? In this instance, basically, we've been told what they generally want, right? So the whole idea is to tailor it better. In terms of concept, that's, I think it's instincts, you know, just to go, well, you know, wearing it feels like love or feels like this. That was just an idea that we just immediately came up with, and had to trust it and hope that they would like it.